Okay, I want to get started and be respectful of your time. Welcome to our Grit Fund information session. My name is Robin Marquis. I use they, them pronouns. I'm going to visually describe myself for folks who are not able to see me for whatever reason. I am a light-skinned, non-binary person wearing a kind of canary yellow blazer. I have my hair up in a bun and I'm in a bright pink and glittery room. Pass it to Krista.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here with us this afternoon. My name is Krista Green, and I'm the Chief Administrative Officer at the Peel. We are the administrators of the Grit Fund. And I am in a pale pink room, sitting in front of my loom and with a plant behind me. I am a Black woman with a brown complexion, and I wear glasses. And my pronouns are she and her.
You guys want me to introduce myself now? Hi, I'm Phil Davis. I'm a professor of animation at Towson University, and I run the Sweaty Eyeballs Animation Festival here in Baltimore. I go by he, him pronouns. Describe myself. I'm a white male with a beard and glasses, wearing a flannel shirt, and I'm sitting in a brightly lit room with windows and a brick wall on one side and a plant behind me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Okay, so I am going to go over just some general guidelines that we have for Grit Fund. We're really excited to start getting proposals for this round. And then I'll pass it back to Phil, who is a past recipient of the Grit Fund, and he's going to tell us about what his collaborative group did for their project. Okay, so again, Grit Fund is for collaboration projects that are led by visual and performing artists, but also cultural organizers and collectives, other kinds of collaborations and artist-run spaces. We are looking for those proposals to come from independent or unincorporated folks. So no businesses or organizations should submit a proposal. We're looking for independent folks. We are looking for proposals from Baltimore City and Baltimore County based artists and those organizers in those areas. And the project itself must take place in either Baltimore City or Baltimore County. These can be exhibitions, publications, public events, public art installations, film screenings, festivals, a new arts venture, or ongoing work of an existing group, venue, or collective. So really just the gamut of project proposals we're looking for you to submit to us. And the only real prohibitions on proposals beyond what I said about incorporated entities, that would be 501c3s or 501c4s, universities or schools. We're also looking for that for the lead applicant on the proposal should not be younger than 21 years of age. So the lead applicant should be at least 21 years old. That's all I've got right now.
And I'll jump in before we pass it to Phil and let folks give people a little introduction to our website. So kind of the logistics of how to apply. So let me share my screen quickly. So this is our website, www.gritfund.org, which we'll put in the chat. Welcome page gives a little bit of just basic information. This Grit Fund project grants is going to be where all the information is, all the things Krista mentioned. We have information about the timeline, which I'll just say right now. The application is open through March 1st at 12 p.m., the end of the day, March 1st. We have information about the info session, which you are already here for, guidelines around the fund, toolkits and forms to help you kind of dig into your application, frequently asked questions, further resources, and then your submit application. So if you don't get all your questions answered here today, or you forget, come back. This is really where you want to go, unless you want to email us directly. And in order to create an application, you first have to go to the profile page and make yourself a profile. Only the lead applicant needs to do this. So just one person for your whole team needs to do this. And you create a profile. This is how you'll log in and edit your application at any point. And once you've created a profile, you go to the apply button. And we'll see what it shows me. Yeah, it's going to tell me I have to log in or create a profile to get into that. But once you have done that, you can go in here, see the questions and everything. If you want to review all of the questions and just the different components of the application before you make a profile, we have that on this main information page, which I'm going to scroll down to, and that's going to be in the toolkits and forms section. So this will show you all of the components of the application. Here's your toolkit, there's a sample project timeline, the budget template, and then this is a full application here in a plain text version. If you have trouble with our website, you can reach out to us directly. We're super here to help. And if you're really struggling with it, you can apply with just using this plain text application. If folks have questions about that, we're going to have a lot of time for questions and answer at the end. I do see something in the chat. Oh, perfect. Krista put the website there now, but this will be around. I can pull this up again later for questions, but I want to pass it on to Phil so we can hear about his project.
All right. Hi, everybody. I made a little slideshow, so I'm going to pull up a thing and talk about the Sweaty Eyeballs Animation Festival. And then I'm going to kind of give you a little behind the scenes of like the budget that I had made and timeline and whatnot. So let me share this. Everybody seeing that okay? Yeah,
Looks great.
thumbs up. Cool. All right, so there I am. Hi, my name's Phil Davis. I'm an animator primarily, but also a musician and sound artist and filmmaker. Living here in Baltimore since 2004. I started Sweaty Eyeballs Animation as sort of this invitational screening series, and it started in 2012. And the very first one took place at Creative Alliance, and it was just sort of a one-off screening program, one night thing, and it got really good attendance. And so I was like, I should keep this going. And so it became a yearly thing that I started doing. And the first one I did, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just like put together a program of animation of people that I knew who were making interesting independent animation. And so I started to question, okay, what is animation and who's the audience for this, or potentially what is an audience that isn't being tapped for this art form? And usually people think of kids' cartoons. You got Mickey Mouse on the left there. But I was trying to tap into animation that's beyond commercial animation and beyond animation that's just for children. So I created a mission statement for what Sweaty Eyeballs could be. And the main idea is to promote sort of unique, experimental, diverse voices in the field of animated filmmaking, really focusing on innovation and storytelling, craft, genre, and help making people question what their preconceived notions of this art form are. These are some posters from the sort of versions of this event. So I did it for for a couple of years as just a yearly screening. And it was an invitational where I was just curating a program of animation. It happened at Maryland Institute College of Art for a few years. Oops. And then eventually the Parkway Theater in Baltimore opened up as sort of the home of the Maryland Film Festival. And we moved Sweaty Eyeballs to there. And when it moved to Parkway, I kind of like expanded the scope a little bit, had now a theater that I was collaborating with, and they were allowing me to create programming with them. And I did some other things like live music to animated film and got to really like explore some other things. And then in 2019, decided to expand it into an actual festival. So a 3-day festival of animation that took place over a weekend, October 4th to the 6th in 2019. And the idea was to make this festival, you know, like a cutting edge, boundary pushing animation, bringing diverse voices in this field to the city of Baltimore, and also to connect people in the community, students, professionals, just enthusiastic audience members surrounding this field. We had 305 submissions from all around the world, and we programmed 85 short films from 15 different countries that first year. This is who we are. So I'm the director of programming of Sweaty Eyeballs, and my wife, Rachel Bone, is the director of operations. So sort of helps with a lot of the nitty gritty. So we were the two main collaborators on this project, but we also collaborated with the theater and with artists and animators from the community and from other areas, running workshops and sort of master classes through the festival. When I was coming up with this idea and like applying to grants and funds and stuff, a big part of it was like trying to figure out, well, like what, there are other animation festivals around. It's not a completely new idea. But most of the really big ones and the successful ones are not in the United States. These are sort of like a top 10 from this website, Animation World Network. So they're all from other countries. And in the US, there are some animation festivals, but they're not that many. And there's not many on the East Coast. And we felt like Baltimore is a perfect opportunity to sort of like highlight this art form. There's a lot of animation being done in and around this area, but there wasn't sort of a platform to show that stuff off. So we partnered with the Maryland Film Festival and this Parkway Theater. If you've never been there, it's on North Avenue, great theater. And also partnered with some institutions. So Towson University, also Maryland Institute College of Art, I didn't mention that in there, and specifically the College of Fine Arts in this university. We were awarded multiple grants. Grit Fund was one of them, and it was great. We would not have been able to pull it off without the Grit Fund. But we also got some money from Towson University and Creative Baltimore organizational grant. And I think that was a really key element of this, was that this is a larger project, and the thing that you guys might be proposing as a project might be not as gigantic of a budget. And maybe the Grit Fund could cover all expenses that are needed. But for what we were doing, we had to cobble together from different sources to pay for all the programming we wanted to do. So it was great. We pulled it off. We had an opening night that was live music, or sort of original scores, live music from local musicians in Baltimore set to silent animations, which was really cool. We did a number of screenings. These are just some photos from the weekend of the festival. Very crowded lobby. This kind of freaks me out now during COVID. I'm not used to being in crowds, but in 2019, we crowded in together into a theater space. So these are just some quick shots of some of the programming. We did a Baltimore showcase of animation from the community here, and then international competition programs. There were 4 of those. And then we also brought in a visiting guest animator, Joanna Priestley, who lives out in Portland, Oregon. And she showed her work, and then she also ran a master class on animation, which was great. And a big part of this was trying to get this thing to not just be a passive, just sit in a theater and watch animation, watch films, but to get to interact with people, get to interact with the artists, and start a dialogue and have a conversation about this. The other thing we did was this feature film, which is sort of an obscure Hungarian feature film, which was really fun to bring. And then lastly, in terms of programming stuff, we had a jury of animators from around the world who chose awards for the festival. So we were able to kind of cobble together funding that we could then pay jurors to watch all the films, give an award, and then the awards were actually software companies that we got to sponsor. So software packages. So here's just some more photos of the weekend. I look back on it fondly now, again, because now we've kind of switched to more remote, but it was great to be in a setting with lots of people and kind of engaged and having great conversations about this medium. We also did like a lot of involvement with students in the area. So there were student animations that were projected in the lobby of the theater. And then we did a student-led animation workshop on the weekend too. And this was free and open to the public, where students from different area universities taught people how to animate, which was really, really cool with different mediums. So yeah, that's that. I'll kind of skip through this. So this is our info. It's just at Sweaty Eyeballs Animation on Instagram and Facebook, and then sweatyeyeballs.com. And then let me stop the share. I'll just pull up PDF now. So you guys can see this. So this is sort of the behind the scenes stuff. I found this buried in my hard drive. This was sort of our Grit Fund narrative statement, sort of part of the application, and kind of running through all these different things and sort of explaining sort of what I just talked about in that presentation, right? Getting into some of the details. We had already, by the time we had applied for the Grit Fund, we had already secured the location, the Parkway Theater, as where the festival was going to be, which was helpful. That was like kind of already underway. We just needed funds to pay for lots of other things. And so, yeah, I kind of gave some backstory, some history about it. And then really like digging into this kind of idea of like, we wanted to create something that was diversely programmed, well-attended animation festival that's bringing together people within the city, but also really trying to push for bringing people from outside of the city here as well, whether that was animators who were in the festival or people just coming to visit to come to the festival. Yeah. So I'm just kind of quickly scrolling through this stuff. Let's see here. We talked a lot about sort of like our inspiration, because my partner and I had lived in Baltimore since 2004, just like gave a little bit of backstory about our involvement in the art scene here in Baltimore, and especially in the film scene in Baltimore, and how we wanted to sort of help support that and encourage more growth in this area of animation. And then, yeah, in terms of the budget section, kind of talking about that a little bit, that the Grit Fund helped to fund travel and honorarium for visiting guest animators, and a retrospective of that animator's work, but also the running of the masterclass and public workshops. And then a big part of it was helping to fund the hours spent programming and curating on my end and on my partner's end, putting together the actual programs. And then, yeah, it's good to have a statement in there of like, if the full funding doesn't happen, how are you going to scale it back? How is it still possible to do the thing? And kind of like reassess and scale it back. This was the timeline that we had come up with in 2019, and it's pretty basic. I'm thinking it's probably similar in terms of the template. It's just like a month by month, right? From start to finish. And since we had already started working on it before we even submitted the grant or the GRIT fund application, we ours started in February. So we had already begun working on securing the partnerships with the theater. We were working on grant writing, making mailing lists, reserving space, etc. And then, talked about putting the grants together, approaching other sort of collaborators, so local universities in this case, for additional sponsorship. And then, basically just like securing spaces and kind of logistical stuff in the beginning. And then by the time we got to May was when we actually started receiving entries. So because this is a festival, we have a call for entry. People submit through an online site called filmfreeway.com. And then we gather the entries, and then I put together a jury of local animators and filmmakers that were sort of like the pre-screening jury who determined which films were going to be in the festival. All this stuff kind of goes down through all the way up until leading up to the actual run of show, which we did in October. And then really important aspect of this too is then what happens when it's over is, we created a survey that we sent out to volunteers and then also attendees. And then we also met with our collaborator, the theater, the Parkway Theater, to figure out how the ticket sales panned out, how many people we got in attendance. And then we created reports. So a report to all the different grant sources that we had, and then reports, some of the university funding required reporting as well. And it's sort of like this painful but really important step is when you get funding, you got to tell people what you did with the money. And it's important. So let me see, click the last. I'm just gonna, there we go. So this is the timeline or the template for the budget that we filled in. And I'm gonna show you this, and then I'm gonna show you my current budget. We've been continuing Sweaty Eyeballs since 2019. So we did it fully remotely in 2020. And this year it was hybrid. So we did screenings online, but then we also did screenings in person. And so our budget has like expanded quite a bit and changed and gotten much more specific in terms of what we have for expenses and also income or either donations, grants, or income. So yeah, but the big part of this, I'm assuming is this still kind of the same?
Yes, it's very similar. So there's a budget template as I showed you on the website. And so you just download that and fill it out. It's almost
just fill it in. It was very easy. I will say we applied to many others, and the GRIT Fund was great because they actually had a template. There were a lot of others where it was just like submit a budget with no guidance. And it was really scary. Didn't really know what exactly they wanted to see or like how specific they wanted us to get. So it's nice with the GRIT Fund one because it's broken down. It's pretty easy to follow. We had a more specific budget in an Excel sheet, and we just kind of like had to take certain things and lump them together into single line items. But it was pretty straightforward. We definitely had artist fees involved, contractor fees. Permits was nice because we partnered with this theater, and so we didn't actually have to pay for permitting and insurance. The theater covered that as part of our collaboration with them. But there would definitely be other projects where I'm sure you would have to figure out that kind of detail and how much that costs. And then we had a bunch of miscellaneous costs as well that didn't really fall into these categories neatly. One thing I will say is like, I think we put down $5,000 for lead applicant and key collaborators fees for programming. And I think that's really important, whether that gets paid for by the Grit Fund or not. You have to put that in your budget. Don't undersell your own time as the person working really hard on a thing. It's really important. And the thing too, I think I've learned, I was pretty new when I was doing this in terms of writing like grant budgets and things like that. But it is really important to put like everything down. And like, even if it is going to be covered in kind, right? So like somebody else is going to pay for it, or somebody else is just donating something, you still want it in your budget because you need to know how much this overall program is actually costing. It helps you in the future too, when you go to apply to grants, like if you want it to be a continuing project, they're going to look at your previous year's budget. And so if you don't have stuff in there, but then the next year you're all of a sudden your budget has expanded and it's way more money, they're going to look at it and say, well, why is it so much more than it was last year? So there's a lot of that, I think, that I've learned through doing some of this, is just putting all your costs in there, making sure they're all there. Even if you're like, oh, I shouldn't bill for my time, but it is really important to do that. Cool. And then in terms of like production, public presentation, there's all these costs in terms of material, depending on what the project. For our project, there wasn't too much in terms of material supplies, but if you were doing a project, obviously that's more of a making an arts piece that involves material that you're building something out of, that would probably be higher. Venue rental, again, like I said, that was an in-kind. So the Parkway Theater covered the venue rental for the weekend, which was huge because it was a large chunk of money. And it's helpful. I do have to say really quickly that the Parkway Theater is a nonprofit, or it's underneath a nonprofit umbrella, which helped us in that like they're trying to do programming like this. They're not trying to just like make money off of programming. They're trying to do things that are interesting and culturally relevant. Cool. Yeah. And then we did have some under publication, we printed festival programs. We had to pay a graphic designer to do all the design work for the programs and the website. Yeah, we had marketing stuff involved in terms of like making ads, making social media stuff. We did some radio ads too. Yeah. And then also there were some equipment costs. This was mostly for the live music component. We needed to rent PA equipment for the theater. Yeah. And I mean, the thing about it too is like, I knew what all these costs were. Now when I look at it, I'm like, what was that cost for? But at the time I did know what all these costs were because I had a separate, very specific spreadsheet. So I think the one thing about the Grit Fund one is like, you want to get relatively as specific as you can in these little sections that give the description. But some of it might get kind of lumped together and you don't have to break out every single like itemized thing. Yeah. And I guess the key too, right, is that the income and the expense need to be the same. It has to zero out, is the idea. You're not trying to like make a profit on this thing. I'm assuming that's still the same, right? We're not trying to make profit. This is a project where like what you are taking in terms of funding should balance out your budget on expenses. Cool. And then at the bottom, we just sort of put some initial stuff of like, what would the Grit Fund cover within this budget? Cool. Okay, I'm gonna stop the share again. Anybody have any questions before I show like my current budget? The budgets are, I will say like I'm an artist too and an animator, and like when I first started doing this, I was really freaked out by having to like make budgets because most everything I'd done before was like doing it for free and, not really keeping track of how much things cost. But it is really, really good to keep track of those things and be organized. And, I just use Google Sheets, or you could use Microsoft Excel, but like, I'm not like, I don't know how to use QuickBooks or anything, but I just use spreadsheets. I have a question here. Did you need to provide receipts or invoicing in your report after the project? To Grit Fund, I don't think I provided receipts. I think you just create a report. You do want to keep that stuff though, for sure. And so if there are receipts for anything, expenses, or if there's any invoicing, either an artist or somebody invoicing you for something that you're paying for, or vice versa, you're creating an invoice for something, keep it all together, right? You want to have that, but usually in the report, they're not asking for like that specific stuff. I don't know. There might be some grants that get really picky on like accounting, but Grit Fund wasn't, which was great. Did somebody else have a question? Rasheen?
Yeah. I was curious about the support from UBMC, Morgan State University, and some of the MICA. What did that, a little bit more on like what that support actually looked like, and how did you solicit that support? Was it like you sent them a blurb and say, hey, I'm working on this project. Here's a portion that I think that you could contribute to. Just curious about how you navigated that, and how many of those were may not necessarily have been a letter, but may have been a relationship that already existed.
Great question. Yeah, so it's helpful. I'm a professor at Towson University, so I had tons of connections already at Towson, so that helped. And there was a program at Towson. One of my biggest funders for the first year we did it was this program called BTU, which is like Baltimore Towson University is what that stands for. And it's like an civic engagement and program where it's like Towson University is trying to support projects that take place in Baltimore City. As this university that's kind of like on the outskirts of the city, they're trying to become more involved. So I tapped into that. But with other universities, a lot of it was that I already know people at those other universities. So usually my way in was like contacting other faculty that also, in my case, teach animation or film, feeling them out, and then having them pass it on to potentially somebody who would actually hold the purse strings, right? So whether that was like a chair of a department, or moving it up to like a dean, or somebody who could find some funding to basically create sponsorship. But my initial emails always, I created a just sort of a, I guess you'd call it I had kind of multiple different emails depending on who I was approaching, right? But it's good to just kind of create a draft that's like potentially your educational press release, right? So it's kind of like explaining what the project is, explaining the timeline, who the people are, your contact information in there, and then also what kind of money you're looking for, right? And some of it can be, you can make one if you're just kind of feeling a place out to figure out if you could get funding. Sometimes it's probably good to just not slap like, we want $5,000 like right at the top, right? You kind of could be like, we need support for these programs, but you don't necessarily always have to put a dollar amount right away. Once you then get a conversation going, that's when you sit down and figure out the money side of it. But then when we approached like corporations, so we have software sponsorship, and then we've also gotten some funding from businesses that aren't educational institutions. And those ones we always put money in there. So we break it down, we create like a pitch deck, a sponsorship pitch deck, basically, that's like, these are the things we're looking to pay for. and this is how much it's going to cost. So and they want to pay for things that are like, tangible things. So like if you're like, we need $6,000 for operating expenses, that's like, nobody wants to pay for that because it's not glamorous or interesting to them. But if you say, I am going to be bringing in 3 visiting artists to this program, each one I need to pay $500 honorarium or something. So like if you give us $1,500, that pays for 3 artists. That like is something for organizations or somebody you're trying to get sponsorship from to like latch on to. And for them too, they're like doing it and they're going to report on it of like, what are these donations they've spent? And so when they can say like, this went towards this cultural programming, it's good if it's specific for that kind of stuff. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I got some was personal relationships and some was you sending out a pitch deck.
Yeah, it's a mix,
Yeah.
right? So it's good to, don't be afraid to cold call people too, but it definitely is, if you have a connection with somebody, even if it's minor, if it's just like, somebody who works somewhere, they might not be the right connection, but they might be able to connect you to the right connection. That's really important. That's the whole networking thing, right? Figuring out how to get to eventually the person you can talk to that could actually help with funding. I'm going to pull up my budget thing here, just so you guys can see that too and see where this is like expanded to. Oh, this is our website, sweatyeyeballs.com. And like, here is our current kind of funding layout, right? From this year, which just happened in November. We ran the festival. And so it's like, if you look at this compared to that Grit Fund one, it's a lot more specific. There's a lot more line items. At the top right, we've got this earned income. And because it's a ticketed event, in this case, we have income that's coming in from ticket sales. We have jury submission fees. We have funding coming in from universities, funding coming in from grants, donations, which is always good, right? And we have these, it's always good too, when you're making a budget, you make an estimate of what you think you're going to get, and then you eventually make what you actually make, right? And so luckily this year we were good in that we estimated total income was going to be 28,000, and we actually got 30,000, which was awesome. So we were like a little bit over what we had estimated. And then, when we were making the budget, it's like you make your estimate of how much income you're going to take in, whether that's from grants, sponsorship, fundraising, donations, actual like payment of like for like ticket sales to an event or something. And then you subtract your expenses, and then you're trying to just like get it to even out, right? So the expenses, all of your earned income should get will get subtracted away when it comes to your expenses, right? And sometimes you do it the other way around. You put the expenses first and the income second. It doesn't. I don't think it really matters which way you put it, but they balance each other out, right? So we have all these expenses, right? And then, gross income, total expenses, gross income. So there was actually this was our estimate, and then we actually ended up more like this. So it was, the total expense was 20,000. Total gross that we took in was 30. And so there was actually money left over, which was great because there were some additional things. We always leave a little wiggle room in terms of like how much, we are actually paying ourselves to run a program. But real quick, another question.
Yeah, it's a budget. It's definitely a budget question. Are there any things to look out for in terms of what would be a red flag, or like people are not likely to fund this particular amount? So for example, you mentioned paying yourself, and it looks like off the rip, I think that's a great idea. I would be wondering where is that threshold? Because it looks like if the total is 10,000 or at that time 7,000 and 5,000 of that was to pay the lead artist. Where's the boundary in terms of like that? Is there an amount that's too much to pay towards travel? Is there a general rule of thumb around how much goes in different sections or percentage wise when we're talking about the budget?
So that's such a tricky question. I mean, it's a great question. I think it's tricky because it really depends on the project, you know? If you, as the like lead person on this project, are doing the majority of the like work on it, and you're not bringing too many outside collaborators, like you want to collaborate with people, but if you're doing the majority, like, you know, pay yourself appropriately, I would say. Travel is a tricky one because it's also kind of dependent on where somebody's coming from and what are you actually paying. Are you just paying to bring them, or are you paying for a hotel and meals too, right? And so some of it comes down to just like, what kind of project are you doing?
Yeah.
I think that helps dictate it. The thing I was doing was like, I'm the director of this thing, but I'm bringing in lots of other people, and some of those people I'm paying, some of those people are volunteering, some of those people are just coming, you know, of their free will. But you know, I don't know what I would say. Yeah, usually it's like you want to pay yourself, but when I'm paying myself for this thing that I'm still doing, that money comes from a couple different sources. I'm not asking for like one source to pay me the whole chunk of what I want to make.
It looks like Krista had something to say on it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think that in general, I mean, the project that Phil is presenting is one that he was getting funding from multiple sources. And so a funder is going to look at that and say, okay, he's locked in the funding to pay for this piece of the project. He's got the money for this piece, and now he's coming to us to look for this specific piece. And if the funder is interested in funding artists specifically, then that's not going to be an issue because they're going to look at the full landscape of a project. But if you're going to one funder to fund all of your things, I can see where you're thinking it might be a concern, you know, if they're coming to you and saying, I'm doing this project and basically I want you to pay, you know, 50, 60% of just for me. And so then, you know, I think that I would in general caution against more than 50% of an entire budget if you're only going to one funder. But also, you know, I don't want to be hard and fast on that because, you know, circumstances for different artists are different, and there are differences in projects, and so there may be more that artist is bringing to the table for that given project that, you know, results in that person being paid more. It is a really it's tricky. It is tricky. You don't want to come to Grit Fund with a project and have Grit Fund be the only funder of the project and only be looking for artist fees. That, you know, because then it's like, but if you were coming to Grit Fund as a portion of the funding for a larger project, and the part that you wanted Grit Fund to contribute to this overarching budget is artist fees, you know, those are different things. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. One follow-up question. In addition to, in terms of like having additional financial support, is something like the person having a Kickstarter for that same program in allotted income? So yeah. if I'm doing a project and I also start a Kickstarter to help support the programming of it, or does that cancel me out in some way?
No, that doesn't cancel that. You know,
Okay.
if it's a larger project, larger than what the GRIT fund would pay for, but you're saying these are my other income sources, whether they are other funders or, you know, private sponsorship from a business or donations. I mean, that's what Kickstarter is. It's individual donations.
Yeah, and donations are, I I would say like that was my main question when I applied. I was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. When I applied, I think it was 7,000 was like the top. Now it's 10, right? 10,000, which is cool. So it was like I applied for 7,000, but I was like, this thing I'm doing is going to cost a lot more than $7,000. So is it okay if I'm going out to all these other sources to all get additional money to pay for it?
I do see a question from Abdu asking, will your examples be available to us to reference after this? Are you comfortable sharing any?
Yeah, sure. I can send them.
You can share them with us, and then we can send a follow-up email to everyone who registered. This is also going to be posted on our website afterwards. And I will point out we have on our website in the toolkits and forms part, which I'll put the link to afterwards. We have a sample project timeline and the budget template. So we have those on our website. But yeah, having Phil's direct examples would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I can send them to you. I mean, some of them obviously might not, if you're not doing something that's, film programming in a theater might not be super helpful, but I think probably good to look at just how it's broken out. Yeah, that last thing I had pulled up was the like our sponsorship pitch deck that we send to like corporations and stuff. Or businesses. So this thing, right? And so it's broken down by like some costs broken out. And this isn't really what I was sending out to universities. But part of it too is like throwing some benefit. Like, what do you, in our case, because it's a festival and there are screenings involved, we can offer like benefits for sponsorship. So it's, we throw in there like if you give us $20,000, which nobody did, you can get 4 all access passes and 6 screening vouchers and whatnot, right? You got to pay up to $3,000 if you want any like free tickets to the films kind of thing. And again, this is for like, that seems like a lot, but this is for like, we're approaching like PNC Bank and stuff for this. So institutions that have this is like a drop in the bucket to them. So you got to just like know who it is you're approaching, right? An academic institution, individual donors, large corporation, or like business entity that has a bigger amount of money that they could spend on something. But part of it too is like logo placement. When we have sponsors, we put their info on our website and, and the newsletter that we send out on social media, etc. So it's, it's nice to just like show that to people. So they know they're getting something for their money, I guess. But that's external from Grit Fund, right? Grit Fund's not going to ask you for that, other than like they'll want some images, right? But you guys, we put your logo, I think, on our website in our program. We put it on like that we had like a slideshow in the theater. So you do have to put, that if you get the funding. But that's like super easy. It's not much to ask for, honestly, to slap a logo up and a website.
I feel like everyone is funneling their questions to me. That's what's happening. I'm just downloading what everyone is thinking and I'm sharing it for everyone. So someone sent to me subconsciously, is there a criteria, is that shared by which the projects are being scored? Like it includes a certain number of collaboration, it ranks high in this, it ranks high in creativity, it ranks low in this, or like, is that something that is shared?
We have not shared something like that. If we create that kind of document, I'll make sure that it goes to everyone who is, who's registered for the previous info session, and also have it posted on the website. I mean, we have some guiding documents in our toolkit that talk about the creation of things and what kinds of things would be good in there, but I don't have like the rubric that a juror would use to rank a proposal by. I mean, we expect that the proposals are going to be so varied, that beyond those big wants that we have, which is location based, artists or collaborations being from Baltimore City, Baltimore County, or location of where something is taking place. It's such a broad number or types of proposals that we're expecting that we don't have a specific rubric that folks should be responding to. And in many ways, Grit Fund and the Warhol Foundation want to give as much freedom to the artist or the collaborators to suggest their project. So there's not a lot of limiting language.
I will add,
even if it's creativity score or collaboration score or resourcefulness or whatever it is, it is being measured, right?
I know what you're
measured
saying.
and jured. So
I know what you're saying. What you're saying. So we have not created a rubric for jurors at this time. We've also not done our call for jurors. That will happen in the beginning of next year.
Okay.
There is, I'll post this link in the chat on our About page. We have, besides the guidelines, we have our Grit Fund values. So kind of exactly what you're saying, like creativity and their collaboration, accessibility, feasibility. So it gives a little bit more language to that, but it's not going to break it down into kind of the rubric. So hopefully this language will add to that, the questions you're asking.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have time for probably one more question. Also, if more questions come up, you can always email us directly. We do one-on-one conversations with folks or over email. I'll put our email in the chat too, but if anyone has a last question, please unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
I'm just curious, I applied a couple years ago and I found the post, I didn't get the grant, but I had a post, process conversation, and I found that incredibly helpful. Not everybody does that with grant flyers. I don't know what the word is. People who are applying for grants don't always get feedback, if they haven't gotten the grant. So I'm just wondering if that's still part of your process. And
yes.
Yeah, I'll just chime in and say when I had applied in 2019, Grit Fund was, compared to some of the other stuff I had applied for, was definitely the easiest to talk to and understand. I had like way too many questions and I was kind of constantly emailing and making sure. So I did a lot of emailing and checking things before I submitted my application too. And I don't know, I mean, you guys might not want me to say that, but get flooded with email. But I think the Grit Fund was great at being responsive to if you had questions about something before submitting an application, whereas others that I had submitted to, I would email and get like no feedback. So it's definitely a good one to apply to. And you know, ask the questions if you have them.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Phil, so much for taking time to share with us about your project, and everyone for joining today. We are going to have another info session at the beginning of January. That date is to be determined, probably with the folks from Girl Power. So if you want to come to another info session, we will be sending that information out, but I will send a follow-up email probably in a couple days. It takes us a few days to turn around the video and make sure the captions are all correct, but that'll be posted on our website. We will email that link to you, as well as with some of Phil's examples.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. It was really cool hearing about your project, Phil.
Oh, thank you. Cool. Well, good luck, everybody applying.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.